All right, looks like we are all here. If we could please go live.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, you are live.
Thank you so much. It is 5 o'clock on the dot, and I am going to call the June 5th Quality of Life Committee meeting to order. If I could please have a roll call.
Okay. Counselor Castro? Present. Counselor Chavez?
Here.
Counselor Garcia?
Present.
Counselor Faulkner?
Here.
Madam Chair,
I'm here.
you have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Moving on to approval of the agenda. I know that our presentation 5A is being removed for those following at home. That is artificial intelligence, AI, an overview and ethical elements of the idea and how it will add impact to entrepreneurs, employment, and our community. We unfortunately, our guest speaker was unable to join us last minute due to a family emergency, and so we will be rescheduling that for another time. Other than that, any other changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. Item,
Oh, we're not at consent yet, so we're not being removed, but just anything else gone.
no.
Wonderful.
Move to approve as amended. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now onto the consent agenda. Marcella, if you could let us know what has been pulled.
So there are 3 items that have been pulled. Item D, item E, and item G. And I also have to let you know that item E on the agenda, it lists a request for approval to purchase and install 38 dash camera recording systems. That number should actually be 48. It was caught before the meeting and the 48 does match the memo.
On item B as a boy?
I'm sorry, E.
E.
Item E.
Oh, E, okay. That has already been pulled. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for making that correction. I know I pulled all these. Did anybody else pull any of these? Nope, just me. All right, sounds great. Any other items pulled last minute, or can I get a motion to approve? as
Approve as
amended?
amended. Second.
Motion and a second. May I please have a roll call?
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, let's move on to the first item pulled off the consent. This is item D, request for approval of a budget amendment resolution bar in the amount of $105,027.46 to move funds from Affordable Housing Trust subsidy payments to housing CIP WIP construction. We have Cody Minnick here to present. And I pulled this, so I will just, I was actually want to be pretty quick, but I have gotten a lot of questions around Lamplighter and the status of Lamplighter, what the timeline is looking like, where some of the delays have been. So, as long as we had this, I did just want to give you the opportunity to provide, a general update on where we are with Lamplighter for any members of the public and for ourselves.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to give a little update on the Lamplighter. Quite frankly, it's in just negotiations between DFA, who has about $4.2 million of CDBG CV funds, and they don't typically do housing at DFA. They do a lot of large infrastructure projects in more rural parts of the state because they handle the state's balance of state CDBG. They're not obviously an entitlement, so they can give funds to more rural communities that don't have a big enough population to receive these entitlements like Santa Fe does. So they don't typically do housing, and they are using MFA as the fiscal agent. And quite frankly, I'm not privy to the conversations there, but they're developing an MOU as far as I'm understanding, and it gets pretty complicated with millions of dollars of CDBG. It triggers all sorts of federal regulations like the Davis-Bacon Labor Act and Section 3 and Build America, Buy America. So they're just negotiating the MOU right now, but the plan is MFA will administer those funds as the fiscal agent, and that's how this is going to proceed forward. I can speak confidently on the city's behalf, which is we've administered quite a bit of funds. We've allocated $2 million worth of ARPA for the acquisition. That's been done. We have the state capital outlay, which is part of this bar before you tonight. that's, everything's executed. We're just waiting for them to have that extra CDBG money and then they could proceed. But right now they're in a bit of a holding pattern. That's all I can really give you.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the delay is happening with processes at the state as opposed to at the city?
Yeah.
And so once those move through at the state, are we ready to move forward with next steps? What will the next steps be once we actually do finally get those CDBG dollars? That money is for reconstruction, so we won't be able to start housing individuals yet. We still will have to be going through with the renovations, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So they don't have that money secured or they really can't go out to bid, but they have all their ITBs ready to go. Everything's locked and loaded. We just need to get that money out the door and it's administering it from the state through a quasi governmental agency like MFA. Complicated.
Yes, there are a lot of large bureaucracies all at play here, including our own. So, well, thank you for providing that update. I really appreciate it. I know I've heard a lot of questions from constituents. Sounds like we can't quite give a timeline because there are a lot of things that are out of our hands.
Yeah, it's a bit of a moving target, but last I've heard, they're hoping by early next year, mid next year. And I think they're trying to do like a phased occupancy since there's 3 buildings there. They
Mhm.
want to get one done and just have get certificates of occupancy as the buildings become rehabbed.
Okay, so early next year to start getting individuals actually living at Lamplighter.
Yeah, that's correct.
And we already do have a contractor to provide the services, correct? We're going with same.
Lifelink is the
Lifelink.
lead agency
Thank you.
providing services to all the units on site. And they are located right next door, so it's a convenient relationship.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you for providing that update. Really appreciate it. Glad to see some dollars that we're able to start moving forward with. Are there any other questions or comments from members of the committee on this item?
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. May I please have a roll call?
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner. Yes. Madam Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks so much for being here, Cody. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to the next item, and this is request for approval to purchase and install, should say 48 dash camera recording systems with digital video recorder kits for the senior services transportation in-home and home delivered meals vehicles from MHQ West Chalmers Ford in the amount of $170,259.18. We have Manuel Sanchez here, Director of Senior Services. Thank you so much for being here. I just wanted to get a little bit more information as to what this brings to the program, because it just says that we're putting these in. My question is to why? What is the purpose of having these? Is this a requirement that we're needed? How is this going to improve our services to the community?
Madam Chair, the cameras are to replace existing cameras in our vehicles at this time. The state appropriated money for purchase of vehicles and re-equipping them with whatever they needed to be equipped with. So radios, dash cams. The current systems that we have in the vehicles a lot of them are inoperable. If we get a concern from a constituent, we're unable to go back and look at the footage to find out, if the concern was valid. For the safety of our seniors, when they're in our vehicles, we like to make sure and have those in there also. Sometimes we have an incident within the vehicle that gets reported, so to be able to go back and re-verify if it was an actual incident between our staff and the person being transported to point A to point B. Or, if there is an accident, we can go back and look and see what was occurring at that time. So it's mainly for senior safety.
Thank you. And so this is something that we already do have. It's just that we need replacement because they are old pieces of equipment.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. I appreciate that. I did not garner that from the memo. So I do appreciate some more information around the fact that this is already something that we're doing and why we are doing it. That was all I had. Were there any? Oh, Counselor Castro.
And I actually didn't pull this off consent, but since we have you up here, thank you so much, Director Sanchez. It's more of a comment. I know that we are donating some police equipment to other agencies. And so if there's any of those police cameras that we could reuse, it could be cost effective to save that money and keep it in our community. But I'm not sure if they've reached out, but maybe we can talk to Ben Valdez about that equipment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, Deputy Chief Valdez.
Any other questions or comments?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. May I please have a roll call?
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, Director Sanchez. And on to our last item for tonight. This is item G. It's consideration of a resolution sponsored by Mayor Alan Weber, Counselor Carol Romero Worth, Counselor Michael Garcia, and Counselor Pilar Faulkner. It's a resolution recognizing the importance of history, calling for placing culturally and historically important statues in respectful, safe public places to tell the story of Pueblo and New Mexico history in an honest, accurate, and complete manner. Beginning this process by placing the Pueblo Revolt Runners statue in the Santa Fe Convention Center and supporting relocation of the Don Diego de Vargas statue to the New Mexico History Museum, which includes the Palace of the Governors. City Attorney McSherry is here, although I think more of my questions are probably at this point for the sponsors, and I'm grateful to have two of you already here. I would like to understand just a little bit more around the development of this proposal. I know some of the feedback I have heard from members of the community is feeling that there is inequitable access to each of these. And that is primarily the concern that I wanted to discuss, hear a little bit more about what this process looked like, what other options were potentially explored, and why are we here with this proposal. So if either of you have any insights, I would very much appreciate it.
Counselor Faulkner, do you want me to go first? Sure. So this resolution was a result of a discussion between Mayor Weber and several community leaders for the past couple months. This is, as folks can imagine, this is a topic that's very important to many, but it's also a very delicate topic. And so there were many discussions that were had in regards to if we were to bring out these statues, where would be the appropriate place to locate them. And so the end result was determined that the runners would be placed at the Santa Fe Convention Center, given the sacred grounds that our Pueblo neighbors to the north, Tesico Pueblo, wanted them placed there. And we have not determined a final location for the Don Diego de Vargas statue. There is an initial agreement to temporarily place that statue at the New Mexico History Museum. In regards to the unequitable access, I would argue against that in the sense that both facilities are open to the public. The convention center, there are instances where it is closed off to the public and it is not open to anybody based on usage. There are instances where it is in use and it's not open to the public. And the same can be said for the New Mexico History Museum in regards to there is a fee for patrons to visit the museum, but there are also many days where there is no cost for residents in New Mexico to visit that museum. And in particular, there is no costs for children to visit the museum. I definitely understand, again, the perspective of access. Now, is this a perfect solution? No. Is this a solution where it's going to bring these statues out to the public where they can understand our region's history? Yes, absolutely. And that is the intention around this resolution, is to bring these statues out into the public and not only to begin the dialogue of our community's history, but to allow for future generations to understand where we've come from. If you look at one statue, let's, for example, look at the Vargas statue. You can't tell the story of our community's history without telling the story of the history of the runners. Katua and Umtua. And I think that I believe we would be doing a disservice to not only to the public right now in present day, but to future generations in regards to who were these individuals and why is there a history around them? What is that history? And how do we learn from that history? And so long-winded answer, but hopefully that answers your question, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate. Counselor Faulkner, did you have anything else to add?
Just to echo some of the points that Counselor Garcia made. Before this agreement came to fruition, one of the statues was not being seen at all by anybody. And so I think the way that I looked at this was a good first step to get some collaboration on what to do with the situation and to bring some parties together that were in high conflict. And so I view this as a first step and not the total outcome. And so we're hoping we can use this to like further the dialogue about our shared histories and then to move towards getting to a place where we have a more respectful understanding of one another.
Thank you. In terms of placement for the convention center, when we say in, are we meaning inside the actual building of the convention center and where is that location identified?
Madam Chair, yes, inside the convention center. A similar location will be for the Don Diego de Vargas statue as well will be preliminary decision is inside the New Mexico History Museum, but that's still still taken into consideration with Mr. Garrett in regards to the final placement for this temporary situation for the de Vargas statue, whether it's inside the New Mexico History Museum or as the resolution states, potentially inside the Palace of the Governors. Reason being for inside a facility is for protection of these statues. We do understand that there is still some contention around these statues and been determined for the safety of the public and the safety of the statues to have them in a facility, inside a facility where they can be protected and ultimately not be destroyed or vandalized in any manner. Again, I think it comes back to these statues are history of New Mexico. And it would be a disservice to our history if we place them in a location where they can be destroyed or vandalized. We want to ensure that there is appropriate space for conversation to be had. So to answer your question, yes, inside the convention center. As far as final location, east wing, west wing, I would have to ask that question to Mayor Weber, just because I know there was discussion in regards to location within the convention center, but I do not know the answer to that. But short answer is yes, inside the convention center, not in the courtyard as was described in the prior resolution in 2018 when the runner statue was dedicated to the city of Santa Fe.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And I very much agree. You know, I think that the conversation around the shared history here in the intersection of these two monuments and who they are representing is absolutely crucial. I think that's been one of the biggest points of conversation with this, you know, conversation in general around how complex it is. And a lot of times we're not really looking at all sides of the story because all sides of the story are not always comfortable to look at. I mean, we have a very, there's a lot of violence in the history of New Mexico. And, you know, I always say that if you look at history, nobody's innocent. We've all have, or every single group has, you know, a time when they have inflicted violence and have had violence inflicted upon them. I am curious about the context and the conversation that is potentially going with these. I would imagine within the New Mexico History Museum, that's what museums tend to do, is put in some descriptions. Is that conversation, has there been discussion around that, how that's going to be represented with these wherever they are placed? Is there going to be greater historical context placed with them? I actually do not remember what was with the Tobago statue before, in terms of a plaque or what to read. Not sure if I ever actually read it, just something that we knew growing up here. Have you guys had discussions around that, what this starts to look like?
Madam Chair, yes. And so in regards to the runner statue, because the plaque has already been cast, I actually had the conversation with the artist that a plaque for the runner statue would be recast that would more than likely include a QR code that would not only give quick synopsis of the runners, but also lead you to more information and for that particular statue. I believe the intention is also to have additional information provided around why is this statue important to our history and how is it connected to other potential statues in our community. As mentioned by Councillor Faulkner, our history is very much interwoven to each other, and it's important that we as a city government tell our history in a holistic manner. That means the good, bad, and the ugly. And we don't want to solely focus on the good, nor do we only want to focus on the bad. We want to be able to tell our history holistically, again, to be able to learn and grow from our history and ensure that history is not repeated.
Thank you. With the DeVargas statue, or is that up to the
Yes,
museum?
Similar, that's a further discussion with Mr. Garrett with the New Mexico History Museum in regards to what an ultimate potential exhibit would look like. You know, I'll be honest, I was, from my perspective, I from the position, let's have both statues together for a brief time at the New Mexico History Museum. What better way to bring these statues out into public and tell our history? But that wasn't the ultimate determination made. But I am confident that Mr. Garrett will put a well thought out, an exhibit that is founded in history and that is not going to solely focus on one singular perspective. Again, I have full faith and confidence in the exhibit that Mr. Garrett will bring forth.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. And I'm glad you brought that, because that is kind of ultimately where I'm leading and curious about why it was not determined to put these together. I think that is, I also think that would be again, as we're looking at the full picture, as we're looking at, you know, people feeling that there is kind of similar access, similar representation, similar display of these monuments that are, you know, two sides of the same story. I understand that there were conversations that sounds like they occurred prior to you all signing on. Is this why that decision was not made? Is that something that is accessible to your knowledge at this time, or do I need to be seeking that source or, you know, information from other sources?
Madam Chair, it's my understanding that Pueblo leaders wanted the runner statue in sacred ground, which is the ancestral homelands of the Tewa people, now known as Tesuque Pueblo. And I stand from the position that I honor that. And just like the DeVargas statue is going to the natural history, or not the natural, the New Mexico History Museum for a temporary loan, I want to reiterate that's not a final location for the Don Diego DeVargas statue. And that's where it's critical that the public come forth and provide input in regards to our final resting place or final place would be for the Don Diego de Vargas statue, because I believe that ultimate location needs to be determined by the public, just like the runner statue was determined by Pueblo leadership. And so still more to come. I want the public to be well understanding that the final resting place, the final place of location for the Don Diego de Vargas statue has not been determined. It is only going on a temporary loan to the New Mexico History Museum.
Do we have a timeline on that yet? Has that been determined? And maybe that's.
It's a
premature.
four-year loan.
Oh, thank you. You're right.
No more than 4 years.
I appreciate that. Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you for providing the context and the information.
Just say
Oh, absolutely. Of course, Council Faulkner.
one thing that I would have appreciated being part of the conversation more, so I could also have context. I think there was a lot of dialogue that happened that Michael, Counselor Garcia and I were not part of,
Okay.
but I just want to reiterate, like, this is, again, like Counselor Garcia said, this is just the first step of getting Don Diego in some place that is best for the public's interests. And so I have to really reiterate that this is not at least for myself, I'm going to continue to work towards getting this more resolved in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll go ahead and yield the floor for now. I think I do have some more chewing on this and probably some community members, and I'll talk to the mayor a bit more about individuals that I should speak to on this to get a bit more context of that conversation. So I do appreciate the fact that neither of you were there for a lot of these. So I do appreciate you taking the time to provide as much information as possible. I saw a hand from both Councilor Castro, Councilor Chavez, which. Thank you.
Just wanted to very quickly, I do have some pause in light of what's happened in Española and in Albuquerque around monuments. I really do have a lot of pause in erecting any new monuments. I think that we have a lot of really great ways of talking about our history through oral history, through education, through conversations, through documentation. Yet I am very much in favor and very happy that we're finally giving the space and addressing that we did have a Pueblo revolt, that we did have 12 years of resistance to colonization, and that's very special. And that's something that this community should uphold and should be proud of. And so that's why I didn't pull this off consent, though I have hesitation to put either statue up in our community because of what's happened and how much frustration it can bring. But I do think that it's something to honor. And so I am going to vote in favor of this today.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Chavez?
Thank you. I don't necessarily have a problem with the locations. I actually feel, so in working with the South Side, I feel like accessibility, especially for community members in the South Side, we're not intentional enough. We're not intentional enough in bringing certain community members to downtown and exposing them to our history like others have access to. So I feel like location, if there's different locations for these like very high profile statues that have been very controversial and have been caused a lot of dialogue and have caused like the celebrations and the pain within our community, is education. And I feel like having them in different places downtown, I think, is a benefit if we're intentional inviting community members in. And I don't know if this would have to be an amendment, but I do think that if we're placing these, accessibility is an issue where we have to be intentional in communicating to the public, these days a month is free access to Santa Fe citizens, or this is when these locations will be open to the public. I feel like this is a part of history so deep into the hearts of many of our community members that it defines who they are. It is a piece of what has made them and their family who they are, its identity. And so placement is one thing, and I like taking our community members throughout downtown Santa Fe where our history is alive and well is important, and I feel less relevant However, what is more relevant is how do we make sure all of our community members do have equal access? And I think we can do that as a city by making choices in the way we communicate and educate around these monuments. Or statues, I feel like that is something we have to do. And I don't know if it has to be in writing. I feel like we could just work with departments in making sure that's the case, making sure we're inviting community members, making sure we're increasing accessibility, inviting schools from all areas of the city. Just, I think this is an opportunity for education, and education can heal if it's done in an equitable way. And so working on the equity part of this, working on the communication, the transparency, and accurate education, right? The pain, the history, the definition of all sides involved is going to be really essential with this. So there's so much more thought that I think needs to go into it, and the fact that once they're placed as one thing, but what comes after is a whole other thing. And I don't know if that has to be defined here right now. I don't know if the city attorney wants to chime in or the sponsors. I don't know if that has to be defined right now, but I do think that is the more meaningful part of this and the healing process around a lot of what has occurred over the last few years. And I don't see so much of that being considered. I see more so just the placement. And I feel like the placement is going to really be the first, and it's meaningful, but almost less meaningful piece of this process. So I just wanted to get, thoughts from the sponsors or from the city attorney on what they think should occur. Should that be defined before this is voted on by governing bodies? Should we define the education and the accessibility and the intention and how this is all going to be presented? Or is that something that we trust will just accurately occur if this is passed?
I'm happy to, Madam Chair, Councilor Chavez, happy to entertain an amendment to that. I think the more direction we can provide, the better. As I mentioned, I've got full faith and confidence that Mr. Garrett will provide such a context for the DeVargas statue. I think one concern I had before this was introduced was, and it was brought up by some of the public, was how can we be ensured that the New Mexico History Museum's not going to put it in the basement, so to speak. And I definitely understand that, because it's not here in black and white saying that's not going to be the case. If folks feel that needs to be in the resolution, I'm happy to entertain that. But again, I have full faith and confidence. Mr. Garrett's a well-respected museum director. I don't believe he'd do that. I actually see him taking this as an opportunity to bring in more folks to the museum. And my hopes it would be a kind of a front and center showcasing opportunity, that this statue would be there. And, I think with the runner statue, that's where the city can take the lead, given that it would be in the city facility. And I think we could determine who would be the appropriate entity to take such direction, whether it be the Arts and Culture Department or even the Tourism Department. But I think what we would want to ensure at the end of the day is that whatever context that is provided around these statues, is that it is a holistic context, and that the context is vetted through appropriate entities. So that means ensuring that the stakeholders that have been at the table through these discussions are okay with the context. And I believe that that is part of the plan, is to ensure that the stakeholders that have been at the table, whether it's Pueblo leadership or leadership of some of the cultural organizations such as the Caballeros de Vargas or the Fiesta Council, their review would be taken into consideration as well. Because I think at the end of the day, it would be a complete disservice to not only the stakeholders, but the general public at large if the context was inappropriate. I think this is a situation where, we can't be afraid of our history. We can't be afraid of telling a holistic history. And as mentioned, there's going to be violence, but there's also going to be good. And how do you tell that story that does not do disservice to the history, but will also allow for context to be told and allow for future generations to understand why decisions such as this are being made? I think, whether you're looking at New Mexico history or American history or history of the world at large, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. There are many, 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 many instances of tragedies and hurt and trauma. And it behooves us as a community to be able to tell that history, that hurt, that trauma, along with the good. Because at the end of the day, we have to remember that is our history. We cannot forget our history. If we forget our history, we do not have a future. And that is a major reason why I am in full support of bringing these statues out, because it allows for us to tell our history. I mean, I think of it in the context, I have colleagues that are out on the East Coast, and when I talk to them about our history here in New Mexico, they're shocked. I mean, most of America is taught that, the clock started ticking when the Pilgrims came here, and that's not what happened. There were people on this continent for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years prior to that. That history is not told. And this is our opportunity to tell a history from a context of our region and what happened in our region. And so, Councilor Chavez, thank you for bringing that up. I think it's important. So happy to work with you on an amendment to how can we ensure that that history is told in an appropriate manner, that doesn't gloss over everything, that doesn't look at it and say, oh, here's a statue. Oh, it was great. And now move on to the next statue. No, we need to tell the story of why is this statue significant to this region's history? Why is this statue significant to this region's history? Why is the plaza significant to this region's history? I mean, we got to remember the plaza was a gathering space thousands of years before the Spanish came in. So we've got to be able to tell that history holistically. And how do we do that? Well, actions like this, beginning to have these first steps, allow us to do that. We as a community can't continue to cast stones and rocks at each other and say, we can't say that because it was bad. Why not? It was bad. We've got to learn from it. That way we don't do it again. So, yeah, sorry but I completely understand where you're going from, because this is an absolute teaching moment for our community. This is bigger than bringing out two statues, in my opinion. It's an opportunity for us to begin to tell our history.
No, I appreciate your response. Thank you. I too believe in accurate history. I believe that, everyone, well, most people that know me know that I'm big on trauma. And trauma really defines who we are. And so, and this is nationwide, our history has defined who we are through trauma. It's not always pleasant to hear or relive or experience, especially if it's hit, your family line the hardest, but it is how we've got to where we are, and it's meaningful and it's important. And I think that it's important for our youth to understand that there is pain that kind of comes with our development and our evolution. And I support that. I would really love to see this kind of introduction start with our youth. I don't know if the school district would be in favor of this. I am not speaking as a member from the school district. Let me just stress that. But, you know, as an educator, I would love to see our youth be like the opening of access to this statue. We have classes or grade levels that focus on New Mexico history. I would love this to be previewed through those youth members before it's even open to the public. So we give dialogue to our youth and they start the story and they re-educate and they have the fresh understanding of what this history means. If there could be a field trip series that the city sponsors and assists the school district with, if the school district would be opening the access to these, starting with our youth. It's kind of perfect timing. The school year starts in August early on, but I feel like we have adults in our community that are very tied to the trauma, tied to the history with these events that have occurred. And with living with certain pain and holding on to it, I think it's very hard for us to open perspective. As adults, we're very calloused. We are who we are. And I think starting with educating our youth in the history and allowing them to tell the story, because they present it in a softer way, right? They present it in a way that's innocent. They present it in a way with questions and curiosity. And I feel like that will open a lot of the adults in our community to where we actually should be when we're viewing this topic. Our history, the good, the bad, and all of it that it involves. So yeah, I might want to talk to the sponsors about presenting an amendment really focused on education and accessibility and being intentional in how this will be introduced to the public. I actually feel like this could resolve a lot of issues if we do this in a very intentional way, right? So beyond placement, but what comes next? So a conversation later would be really appreciated if the sponsors would be willing to do that. Thank you.
And point of information, I just wanted to thank you so much, Counselor Chavez, for that. And please feel that MIAB is an ally in any of that work. But I did want to just mention that on Sundays, the museum is free to all New Mexico residents and 12 and under are free all the time.
Thank you.
But
Counselor Faulkner?
Counselor Chavez, something I thought I heard you say too, is it'd be nice if we had a communication packet that went out with this, so people knew when it's open, where it is in the building, whatever it is. We don't have to get super specific. But I do think one of the things we struggle with as a city is we assume that everyone just goes to the website and gets their information. And I think this is an opportunity to go to where the people are and give the people the information rather than expect the people to come to the city for information.
Yeah, because we have a huge, we have a huge email list, and I feel like if we would do Santa Fe's history and when people could go for free to expose themselves to our history, and we would have something in email every month, just exposing them to that opportunity. I always talk about intentionality. It goes a long way. And it's our job to reach out. So I think that would be a great way to do it.
And there's I've been thinking about some easy processes to get information out to the public. And one of them is use of QR codes. If we have the websites set up, then staff doesn't have to recreate information. But if we drop QR codes in restaurants and at the schools, so people could just click it and there's the information they're looking for. And I think this is an opportunity to look into how we can better communicate with the public. And this is a perfect item to try to move information out into the public rather than expect the public to come to us.
I think we could learn a lot from the libraries and communication. I get the library emails often, and I see what's going on. I feel like that communication, and it's all around education, it's all around youth opportunity. And we should be promoting education. That's how we grow better. But that's something I would like to see around some of these history education opportunities, is something that mimics what the library does with their communication. I'm looking at the person that could help us make that happen.
Madam City Attorney, you have come to the podium with a response. I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Cassett, counselors. I just had a point of clarification on the language that's currently in the resolution. It does specify that the display, that the placement has to be in a public space. So I don't think an agreement that doesn't specify the placement in a public place versus a closet or somewhere else at the History Museum would be consistent with the current language of the resolution. So I think at least that level of specificity is there. So I think a basement would not be consistent with the resolution as written. So we can, I think we're assured on that level, at least as written. And then beyond that, my understanding is the museum director is exploring what the appropriate place within the History Museum is, and the Palace of Governors is part of that History Museum. And I think Department of Cultural Affairs wants everyone to be clear that they're not two separate entities. It is all one operation in terms of how they manage the facility. There's obviously different parts of the History Museum, but it is managed as one operation under one director. And then just one other thing, I think this will, in terms of education, you absolutely could add something to this resolution. There might be a bigger picture to look at as well. So I don't know if you want to limit it to this resolution versus looking at something broader. So that would just be something to think about. I think some of the ideas here are bigger than the two statues, which is great, right? So just those two comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, City Attorney McSherry. Another clarification, if I'm understanding the resolution correctly, that the placement of the Pueblo runners would not occur until there had been an agreement. I mean, it was a little mushy. It was like, we will attempt to, but that essentially it's not that the Pueblo runners, even though that those would go up immediately. And if this resolution were to pass, that we would then have to go through the process. But the goal would be to execute the agreement with the New Mexico History Museum. And at the same time is when both would be put on display. My
Sure,
understanding.
Cassette, that's exactly right. Yes, I think the goal would be within the next few months for both. But that would be entering an agreement with the History Museum and then going forward with both of those.
With the agreement with the History Museum, would that have to come to us to be executed?
You're asking the city manager to negotiate it in this resolution, so I don't think there's going to be a cost that would trigger any sort of additional review, and you're delegating that to the city manager. So it would have to be consistent with this resolution.
Okay, so it's not just that he negotiates it, but he also approves it. It doesn't come back to council for approval.
Chair Cassett, I don't anticipate anything in that agreement triggering a council review. It won't. I don't think there's going to be any cost other than the transportation itself and probably insurance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, I do want to thank the committee, because I think this was a really important discussion, and I think also highlights, as Councilor Chavez so eloquently put it, as always, that there is so much more happening here than what is simply stated, and that conversation around that City Attorney McSherry brought up, when and how those things are kind of what's the word I'm looking for? That they're decided upon, and that we really get into the detail and information there. I know for me, there are some, I would, and again, I will reach out to the mayor, or I'll reach out to Mr. Garrett about this. I do have some kind of clarifications that I would like in terms of processes behind here, some decisions before I am comfortable voting in favor. But I think that the points that every member of this committee brought up were really crucial. And I just really want to thank this committee for the conversation here, because I know that over the last, 4 years, this has become this place of division in our city. And one of the things that I have been concerned about, cautious of, and also really grappling with is how do we find ways to, weave ourselves back together as opposed to pull ourselves apart more. And that's been challenging, because there is a lot of opinions and feelings and disagreements and different viewpoints, and how do we both honor those as well as find the middle, knowing that not everybody will be in agreement with the middle, and where is that middle. So I do very much appreciate this coming forward and the beginning of this conversation. Again, I still have some questions that for no fault of either of your own, that I feel like cannot be answered by the sponsors, that I do need to be speaking with other individuals to discuss, and some mulling on this that I have to do. But I also, Counselor Chavez, I really want to thank you for bringing up this conversation around accessibility, and that that really does need to be more spelled out and focused upon, and that needs to be a larger part of this conversation and this process. I don't believe I have anything further to say to any other members of the committee at this time.
Move to approve.
Second, we have a motion and a second. May I please have a roll call?
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
I will abstain at this moment.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, moving along. We will be going to matters from staff. I will pass it over to you. Director Brown, Director Sanchez Tucker.
Good evening, counselors. Thank you. Summer youth and teen programming has gone off without a hitch, so we're off to a good start. And don't forget to sign up, kids, for the summer reading program in the library. That's kicked off. You could track hours, minutes of your child's reading, and they get really cool prizes. So let's support reading throughout the summer. The library website has all the information on the summer reading program. I wanted to let you know about an upcoming event that you'll be getting an invitation to. Our consultant, Dr. Van Voorhis, our on homelessness consultant, she has invited the a team from the Denver Mayor Mike Johnston's team to come visit with us and to answer questions about how they're handling homelessness and what they've seen as successful, and to just kind of talk over with us. So you'll have a meeting invitation to meet with them. And if you're unable to make that meeting, we are going to try to schedule a quality of life presentation Zoom with them as well. So I will get that on your calendar soon, on all the counselors' calendars. And also just talking about, ways that our youth can be engaged in community resources and learning and education in our history. A couple years ago, I worked with Little Globe at the library to work on a program called Community Storytellers, and that was just a really fabulous program. And so we're going to revive a new version of that, Action Teen Filmmaking and Media Production Workshop at the Teen Center. And so the information just went out in your city newsletter this morning about registration for that. So you do apply, and teens who participate, it's for ages 14 to 22, will learn about media production, filmmaking, and also just telling their stories in the community story. So that's a really exciting project, and hopefully we can grow upon that as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Brown.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. June is a very busy month, so I have lots of things I wanted to share from a business and community standpoint. Tomorrow, Economic Development is sponsoring their monthly coffee and collab. It's going to be at the Rail Yard Farmers Market. Additionally, there will be a farewell included, but the coffee and collab is for the business community, and also I will be there and as we talk about my next steps.
The farewell is to you, just
farewell is
so
to
we are clear on who
Farewell
we
is
are
to me.
farewelling.
We're
So.
farewelling me, Rich Brown. And later that day, we will have another sponsor event. We have Mercado on the south side, and Liz Camacho has been working with the Chamber of Commerce and some of the local community organizers. So we have another Mercado for community of artisans and small businesses. So that's happening on the south side. Additionally, there is a deadline that's tomorrow also. We are recipient of a National League of Cities grant called Good Jobs, Great Cities, and they've been asking local businesses for feedback. And so tomorrow is the deadline for that feedback. And you can find that on the city economic development website. If you go to some of the business newsletters, it shows it on there. Additionally, we have SCORE is we're sponsoring SCORE's Southside Business Series. They have 3 of them. One starts on June 11th, another one is on the 19th, and the next one is on June 25th. And you can find out more about that at score.org. Next after that, on the 10th of June, the Land Use Department is doing their inaugural Built for the Future land use convening. And it is inviting all the folks from the architectural, construction, and development community. We have the convening that starts at 8:30 at the convention center. And I think right now there's 100+ people who have registered. So we're very excited about this first inaugural convening of our community. We've never done it before. So it's going to be a good meeting from like 8:30 to 2. After that, we also, on the 27th, the Santa Fe Business Chamber is doing their annual achievement awards, and that's going to be at Bishop's Lodge on the 27th of June. And then we move into our festivities around Juneteenth, which are a little bit earlier. Starting on the 15th for the Juneteenth celebration, we will have events on the plaza on the 15th, and then we will have a Juneteenth picnic on the 16th, Sunday, at the Federal Building Park, which is just at the end of this street. And then from there, we switch over to our Pride celebration. We have a lot of Pride events coming up in the month of June, but the Pride Parade will actually be on the 29th, and there'll be lots of city employees who will be involved with that for the whole community. On the horticultural side, they are sponsoring a Canyon Road Summer, first Wednesdays, and it actually starts tonight. So if you still have walking feet, come over to Canyon Road. There'll be no cars, but it's open for pedestrians, and it's going to be the first Wednesdays of each month, starting this month. So tonight's the first night. The Arts and Culture group is also having a gallery show with UNESCO that starts on the 21st in the gallery, and it runs through July. So there's lots of things going on from there. And I failed to mention when he was here, but Cody Minich is actually leaving us and moving to Colorado to be closer to his family. He just had a baby, and so they're going to be closer to the grandparents. So the June 28th is his last day in the office. So I think he has, I don't know when he'll be back for other probably governing body meetings, but he'll be here to the 28th. But he's leaving. He and his wife are moving closer to their family in Colorado, and I think we're going to miss a librarian too, right? Yes. Oh, okay, she's leaving. Okay, she's the mom. Okay, and then finally, as most I think people know, this will be my last quality of life committee meeting as I'm retiring on the 21st, and I just want to say thank you for the privilege to being a public servant for the city and to work with you. It has been an incredible journey, and I do see lots of things happening. I'm not leaving Santa Fe, but I will be visible again after a period of decompression. But I just wanted to say thank you personally. This has been a great, and this is, the new committee that started during COVID, and these Wednesday meetings that we've had, and all the things that you have discussed and approved and reviewed has really changed the quality of life of our city. And I want to say thank you very much for that. And thank you for the opportunity to work together. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Really appreciate it. I'm gonna miss you a lot. I'll move to matters from the committee. Counselor Chavez?
I just want to tell Director Brown, thank you for being a light. I think it's really, leadership is my thing, and I love when I get to witness leaders that have the heart. I feel like we find a lot of leaders that have the mind, and that's valuable as well. But I think leaders that have the heart just bring a presence that is very valuable to any organization. And I want to just really acknowledge your presence and the light that you brought, the way you communicate, the way you cared, the way you were intentional. I appreciate it. It will be missed, and I wish you luck and rest and peace and positivity.
Thank you.
Counselor Castro?
Ditto, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Counselor Chavez. Thank you, Rich, for all the time you spent with us. I had the opportunity to work closely with you for a few years, and it was a blessing. And then I want to sort of chastise the rest of the country. We are behind the curve at this point. Once again, Mexico has elected their first female president. And so we have some work to do, United States.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Garcia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rich, thank you. Past couple of years, it's been truly an honor to not only have the opportunity to work with you, but to learn from you. I think there's so much that you brought to the table and are going to continue to bring to the table in a different capacity. And so I'm thankful that you're sticking around here in Santa Fe, but definitely leaving some big shoes to fill. So I know this isn't our last hurrah. We'll still have the opportunity to connect and work with you for the next couple of weeks, but just thank you. I really, really, really value everything you brought to not only to the city, but to our community. So thank you.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, I do have some of these days I lie awake and think, well, I have to go back to the podium again at my new capacity, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Any other matters from committee? Counselor Faulkner?
I didn't, to have a lot of time to work with you, but the time that I have worked with you, I've really enjoyed your positivity, and you bring a lot of fun energy to the committee, I feel like, and I appreciate all the things you've done for the city to date.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I have really enjoyed the opportunity to work so closely with you, obviously with both of the committees that I chair. We have spent a lot of time together, and you and I have just had so many incredible conversations, and just a lot of my policy interests have fallen under your departments. And so I am very much going to miss you. Very excited for you. I hope you do rest some.
Yeah.
Just a smidge. But I really want to thank you, especially as I have taken on the chair of both Quality of Life and EDAC. Your support and guidance and brainstorming, and it has really been invaluable for me as I have moved into these roles, and I really want you to know that impact that that you have had, and how much I am going to miss you, and how much of those lessons I will continue to bring forward in this work. You've also made some really incredible hires in your team, so I'm pleased that I will continue to work with them, and I want to thank you for bringing on and recognizing those individuals and bringing them to the team. And so I expect to still see you socially, just so you know. So you have my number. And Christopher has plans for us. My hairdresser is one of his very good friends. So, but thank you, and you will be incredibly missed. So just thank you so much for all of your work and your presence, and what everybody else has said.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course.
I'm remiss. I did not.
Yes.
Thank Rich. Thank you, Rich, for everything you have done. And I've just so enjoyed working with you. So we really appreciate all you've done for the city and the community. And just thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, with that, our next meeting is actually Tuesday, June 18th, because Wednesday is Juneteenth. And